So yeah, like I mentioned, I mean, OJ Simpson passed away today. He was a famous football. For those who don't know, I felt probably should just uh, elaborate because there are people who hear this who really don't know why it's important or what it means. He was a famous football player. He was an actor as well. Most people knew him from, he had a really, and I wanted to talk about this later, he had a really impressive run as a football player. And he was also in movies like The Naked Gun. So, a lot of people knew him from that. He did commercials too. He was in a chicken restaurant commercial. I saw a few of. I don't really remember the name of it anymore. He did commercials for a limo company. He did a lot of commercials. He was kind of, he was a big deal back then. Everyone knew OJ. Everyone loved seeing him and stuff. And oh yeah, there was also a thing where there are allegations that he killed his ex-wife and her another guy in her house. But he was not convicted of that. He was acquitted. So you don't really need to remember. That's not important. But yeah, I mean, though, if I'm gonna get serious for a second, clearly, most people who know O.J. Simpson, I think there's a lot of people who just know who he is based on the murders and don't even know what he did before that. But there is a reason for those who don't know that it was so shocking when he was arrested, when he was on trial for those murders, because he was like this national, like I don't even know if there's really a comparison for what he was like. I mean, it's not. I don't think he was the biggest star in the world at any point, but he was a former sports star. He was an actor. A lot of people knew him, and a lot of people just didn't think someone of his character would commit murder. And some people still don't think it. But I think with myself, like a lot of people around my age, I first learned about O.J. Simpson through his Twitter account. And if you don't remember, before I even knew of the murders, I knew about his Twitter account. I just kind of knew the name O.J. Simpson as a notorious person in this country. I didn't really even know why, but I just knew there was a lot of controversy around him. And then in 2019, doing a lot of like reminiscing this episode, but there was the news that he was acting all goofy on Twitter, and that Twitter account was classic, man. Like people really should just go back and look at some of those videos he put on Twitter. And I don't even mean to like make fun of him. I mean just like, well, okay, to make fun of him, but not in terms of like not like laugh, more like they were kind of funny, and I think he was kind of in on the joke. But I'm not compliment like I feel like I should tread lightly when complimenting. I'm not complimenting him at all. They were just kind of funny in terms of, you know, he was a guy. He was the celebrity that people mostly know because there are allegations he killed people, and he's on Twitter like playing golf and driving around in a golf cart and with like framed photos and stuff. So it's pretty funny. And before that, I kind of knew he was a prisoner only because he had recently been released from jail on parole. So I knew he had served time, kind of. But that was about it. I was really not familiar with who he is. And I guess I need to say, though, who he was, because as of today, OJ is no more. According to the New York Times, it was cancer that got him. And I guess he was one of those guys. There are a lot of celebrities like this. Ironically, Norm Macdonald was kind of like this, but who like kept their health concerns secret, didn't really talk about it, since none of us really knew about it. Or at least I didn't know about it. Although it's like, I don't know, with Norm Macdonald, it's like people still were paying attention to him when he died, so it was kind of a shock that he didn't talk about his health. I don't know how many of us were like paying attention to OJ's health. I guess with Norm Macdonald, it was more like he wasn't telling us. With OJ, I don't know, maybe he was telling us, I just didn't know. Maybe it was well known for a while, but yeah, it was surprising to me. I didn't know that he was sick or had anything wrong with him. But I guess, I mean, if we're going to talk about this seriously, I guess whatever you might think of OJ, I mean, he was an incomparable pop culture figure just in terms of, again, like seriously this time, for those who don't know, that trial was called, the trial of the century was the name of it. And I really don't think there's much doubt that it was. And not even just because of who he was, but because of all the media around it. And there was this belief that the verdict, it was like, it became a racial thing, the verdict, why he was acquitted. Because now, it just seems that most people just seem to be in agreement that he did commit those murders. And I don't want to get sued or anything, so I'm not going to say if he did or not, but there are a lot of allegations that he did. Well, I shouldn't say allegation. I mean, when you're on trial, that kind of puts it more than just allegations, but there are a lot of people who believe he did. At the time, it was a lot more mixed, but I'm pretty sure it was a majority of people thought he did even then, but it was much slimmer. Now it's, I think it's kind of more only like accepted as fact that he did it, but that trial was, a really just probably the biggest media event of the decade, honestly. Like when I'm thinking about it, like what was, a bigger media storm than that? I mean, maybe like, I guess the like Michael Jackson pedophilia allegations came out a few years earlier, maybe something like that. But I don't know, honestly, like the OJ trial really was the trial of the century. I mean, that white Bronco chase, if you haven't seen it, which I'm sure most people have, that is like, one of the most famous car chases of all time. I mean, really, I mean, in terms of like real life car chases, it may be the most famous one of all time. Which, for those who aren't really familiar, which I'm sure most people are, but it was, if I'm not mistaken, it was Al Callings, I think is how you say his name correctly, driving OJ's white Bronco with OJ in the back, and he was trying to talk OJ out of committing suicide because it was when the police were trying to arrest him for so he could be tried with the possibility of Nicole, that was his wife, and Ron Goldman's murder. And yeah, it was just insane. Yeah, I mean, it would have been intense to see that. I've heard from people I know in my actual life who were old enough and saying like, yeah, I watched that live when it was happening. Like people in schools, it was like taking a break from like learning and turning on the TV to watch OJ's white Bronco escape. So yeah, it was big news. I think a lot of it was also partially because he was saying he was that OJ was going to kill himself, that people were wondering like, is he going to like die on like live TV? And I think regardless of what anyone thought of him at the time, I think most people, the vast majority of people, at least I hope, were hoping that wouldn't happen, and that at least if he did do it, he would face a trial for it, and then he wouldn't just take his own life. And obviously he didn't. But I guess moving on from that, in terms of his legacy, since he only died today, it hasn't been a long time. And so I can't really like comment on what people will remember him for, I guess. I mean, I think we all mostly know what he's going to be remembered for. But the funny thing is I've seen a lot of people just talking about him as like a football player and not mentioning the other stuff. And by the other stuff, most obviously, I mean, not mentioning that he was an actor too. No, I mean that, he allegedly murdered 2 people. So you think that would be talked about more? Or at least he was on trial for it. Because that's the thing, even if he didn't do it and there was just like no doubt in people's minds that he didn't do it and it was wrong and he was either framed for it or that it was a mistake, I mean, you think it would still be worth mentioning that he was on a trial of that scale, But it's honestly shocking, and it's a trend I've seen. I don't really know, like, I've seen I guess it's, tragic for him that he passed away now, because I only just saw like somewhat of a resurgence of people like acknowledging him just as like a great football player and not talking about everything else associated with him. And so, I guess right when things seem to be on the up and up for OJ, he kicked the bucket. That's too bad for him, I guess. And I'm really trying. I mean, if you're paying attention, I'm really trying to temper my language here. I'm not trying to praise OJ Simpson. At the same time, I'm really not trying to speak ill of the dead. I don't really necessarily even agree 100% with that trope of like, don't speak ill of the dead. But I'm really trying not to do either one of those. I'm not trying to acquit him, like, no pun intended, like with my language. But I'm also trying to not just take a massive dump all over the guy right after he died. So I don't know. It's hard to do, and I feel like there's nothing I can really say about him that's gonna make everyone happy. Although I'm still talking about him, so I don't know. I guess I haven't learned. But the thing about him being a football player is like, there's kind of an abundance of people on any place where they're acknowledging him as a football player. Like the NFL, for example, the NFL YouTube channel I think posted a thing when he. I'm not trying to attack the NFL YouTube channel, but I think it was mostly trying to focus on his NFL career, which I guess you can't really blame them because he worked for them for a number of years. They probably don't want to acknowledge all the other baggage around him, which, I mean, at the same time, that makes you question why they'd even release this. But I don't know. He is a famous enough football player that maybe they felt compelled to do it. And I see a lot of people saying things like on those types of plays where they're just posting things like that, making, jokes about it, saying he was like a killer ball player and stuff like that. Now, it is pretty funny, so I'm not going to get all up in arms about it. But I just think it's interesting that it seems like, I don't want to say it's 50-50 because it's not that much, but it seems there's a good mix of comments when talking about OJ that are, making jokes about that, kind of lumped in with also saying like just R.I.P. Ron Goldman, Nicole Brown Simpson, which is I don't think that's an inappropriate reaction. That's completely fair. Honestly, that was my reaction when I saw this. But also, there's people trying to say like, man, OJ, 2,000 yards in a season is crazy, which is one of the statistics I believe, which I actually have written down somewhere. And the thing is, I like football, but I do not understand what's considered good for a season or anything like that. I'm sure. Yeah, I know you hear my voice, so I know that's shocking to you. But I don't really know if that's impressive. I assume it is if people are, if it's good enough for that people would overlook that you might have murdered people, then I guess it is good. But outside of football, people posting about related to football, I saw the family of Ron Goldman made a statement about this, which according to the New York Post, which isn't the best source either. Like, man, I'm not getting great sources for this show, but whatever. They referred to his death as, quote, no great loss to the world. OJ's death, obviously. I mean, I feel like I need to make that clear because I kind of worded that weird, but they referred to OJ's death as no great loss to the world. And, like, I feel a bit sad for them that, well, that they have to even make a statement on a day like that they. I mean, maybe they chose to because they wanted to put their feelings out there, but I feel bad that I can't speak for them or how they feel, but I would assume that there's at least a good portion of the family that is trying to just not acknowledge OJ Simpson or that he ever existed, and you can't really blame them. Like, you can't blame them at all for wanting to do that. Even if he didn't do it, you can't blame them for wanting to do that. So, but you know, you can understand why they would say something like that, obviously. And you know, since you know they obviously do think he did it. In case you're not really familiar, I'm pretty sure both the families, or at least Ron Goldman's family, has been pretty outspoken in that they think he did it, which. You can't really blame them for. I mean, if you saw the trial, you can't really blame them for thinking that. And I hope they're able to find peace in some way. You know, I mean, I don't like to talk about people dying and taking joy. I feel like that's like fundamentally kind of inhumane to take joy in some people's dying. I mean, unless they're like a dictator or a Okay, I completely blew up. I was gonna say or a murderer, and then you think about it. Oh well, does OJ fall into that category? Depends on who you ask, I guess. The point is, I would very rarely take joy in someone's death, but I understand if they do at this point. I really don't. I don't think you can blame them for feeling that way, and I hope with this they're able to kind of maybe move on in some way because you know it must be painful for the past few years for both the families involved. I mean, I know Nicole Brown Simpson has family members who are technically OJ's family members as well, but you know to spend that OJ got to spend the last few years of his life, you know, in Florida. Dicking around on Twitter and clearly not taking anything seriously. And I know it's not like he was posting tweets about, like, admitting he killed people or anything, but, you know, it's clear the murders, I mean, I don't want to speak for what his psychology was, but it didn't really seem like he was scarred that much by the death of his ex-wife. And on a related note, I do feel bad for his family, too. And by his family, I mean both Nicole Brown Simpson's family and his, you know, personal family, because obviously, you know, his family is involved in the murders and that they lost a mother. At least his children did. And it must be they must have really confused feelings in terms of, well, I don't know. Maybe they don't think. Maybe they're like unanimous and they don't think he did it. That's pretty possible. And especially when you have a family member. I mean, when you know someone personally and they are alleged to commit some heinous crime, maybe for the worst, but your opinion's going to be influenced by them. Or I shouldn't say for the worst, but maybe more along the lines if you think they did it. Your opinion's going to be influenced by the fact that you know them. And so honestly, I mean, I know it sounds like I'm just, you know, falling to whatever side of the person I'm talking about, but if OJ's family don't think he did it, then they have the right to think that. So if you want to, like, try to dunk on OJ, that's one thing, because, again, he is very possibly committed some of the, you know, the worst crimes you can commit, but it would be best to just leave his family out of this. I mean, I know people aren't going to his family and trying to, you know, be jerks, but I really feel like it's probably best since, you know, especially the ones who are also family of Nicole Brown Simpson, like his children, because they got to be suffering. Like, the facts are, regardless of what you think about OJ, they lost, you know, their mother, and now they lost their father, and, you know, it's just kind of, it's got to be hard for them. But, you know, the angle I kind of wanted to approach, I was thinking, I thought I should talk about it, not to, like, make fun of OJ necessarily, but more just because, you know, he's a massive pop culture figure, and I want to talk about it in a way where I feel like most people aren't. And so I thought it would be a good idea to discuss his legacy as a ball player because, you know, I think as I covered before in my intro, that's what history is going to remember the most for what he did. Out of everything in his life, people will remember most the fact that he was a great ball player. So I wanted to list down, in my opinion, why the top 5 best qualities OJ had as a football player. What made him so great? And I would do top 10, but I'm going to be honest, I can't think of enough, and I wrote this today, so I'm not going to I'm really slapping this one out. I did not put a lot of thought into it. But number 5, the thing is, one thing about OJ, if you look at his record, is that he could play for many different teams because he started with the Buffalo Bills. If you noticed, he played for the Bills for the majority of his career, but he just didn't fit. You know, he just didn't fit there. He just didn't fit at all. And so he briefly played with the 49ers, only for I think 1 season. And if you can believe it, he didn't fit either. He didn't fit there at all. And so how much of this was his choice to make sure that he didn't fit because it fit his agenda or whatever, I don't know. But, you know, if you don't fit, then you must. I think there was more to that. I don't know. There was more to that. If you don't fit, then you must. I don't know. But the point is that was one thing about OJ that maybe the negative way of looking at it is he just didn't fit anywhere. But I look at it as more that he was just too big for one team. You know, he had to be with multiple. He could play for multiple teams. I'm surprised he didn't play during one game on one team, the next game on another team. You know, he was that talented. He could do it. I was surprised he didn't play for both teams at once. But anyway, number 4. If you were paying attention, if you ever seen replays of OJ playing football, he was a tough man to go through. He would just murder his opponents on the field. You know what I mean? Like when he hit you, you know you were going down and you weren't getting back up. Especially in one piece. You were just down for the count when OJ had his sights on you, man. You were just done. So if you wouldn't cross OJ for anything. So that was another quality that just you don't always see in football players, but OJ had that. Number 3 is that OJ could cut through the field like nobody's business. He just slashed right through that thing, man. He became the first NFL player to rush more than 2,000 yards in a season, if you can believe that. And apparently that's, like I said, I mean, if someone told me that and was like, aren't you impressed? I would just say like, oh yeah, 2,000 yards, that's a lot. Because I'm not really completely sure. So I'm hoping some football people can confirm that that's really good. And so, I noticed a lot of people in comments on NFL videos like he rushed 2,000 yards in a season. People who don't really know that much about OJ. So if that can, turn a few people on OJ, make them see another side of him, then I think that's pretty cool. Number 2 was that OJ was a killer running back, man. He played for the NFL for 11 seasons, and you don't get to stay that long for nothing. Like it's a cutthroat industry, and he would just like anyone who ever crossed his path, he put a stop to that, man. Like anyone who thought they could do a better job than him, no, you can't beat OJ. When the juice is loose, there's nothing that can stop him. And number 1 is that OJ was voted most valuable player for the NFL in 1973, as well as winning the Jim Thorpe Trophy, and I completely said that wrong, I'm sure. And so whatever you're thinking, those are great honors. And that's kind of why I wanted to put this as number 1. There are qualities that make him better technically, I guess, but he was the MVP in 1973, and I looked it up. He was actually considered MVP in multiple categories, which is something I didn't really understand. But when I was looking at the most accurate source for this stuff, Wikipedia, that it listed him as number 1 player in multiple categories, the MVP in multiple categories. So that's pretty cool. Got to give him his due credit. I couldn't believe that. And the other interesting thing about that is 21 years later, he decided to celebrate. And so as a celebration, he decided to kill his ex-wife and that guy who was bringing over her glasses. So, no one parties harder than OJ, man. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, I guess the point is I'm going to hell for this whole thing. And I want to emphasize right now, when I referred to it as like a cutthroat industry or something, that was by coincidence. I did not mean to, I know I'm pushing it with some of this, but that was more of, I did not plan that out before I said it. I just kind of came to mind. So, I'm going to hell. I'm going to hell for that. But, the point is, wherever OJ is, like whatever, you believe in an afterlife, like heaven, hell, whatever, wherever he is now, depending on who you ask, I guess, that might help determine where he is. If you ask 9 out of 10 people, then he's in one place. 1 out of 10 people, he is in another place, and I'll leave you to determine which one is which. But I guess the ultimate thing I just want to close on is I hope the families of the victims, whoever killed them, I don't know. I hope they truly are, at peace now, and that they can just move on. And I guess they could have done that earlier, but it's like, I hope they're just able to, just live happier, I guess. I guess that's, again, kind of contradicting what I said about you probably shouldn't take joy in people's death, but I hope they can just put the murders of their loved, I don't want to say the murders of their loved ones, but the fact they can maybe try to, realize that there's not a guy on Twitter who's seeming to make a mockery of the whole thing every day when they wake up. And the other thing I just wanted to say as we close out is that, I'll give him credit, 2,000 yards in a single season. I'm sure that's a lot, considering because the football field is I'm just doing the math now, it was 100 yards. So he did 20 times that in one season. That's pretty impressive. I guess maybe it's considering his position, maybe it's not as impressive depending on who you ask, but I don't know. I'll give him his credit, and again, that's not me. I need to make clear because I do not want anyone having a problem with it. This is not me praising him after death when he very likely murdered people. That is not what I'm trying to do. I'm just saying, I don't know if that's a record that is still held to this day, but if so, then, well, someone has to beat it sooner or later because I guess OJ can't really get the recognition for that.